All right. Well, it's 5 after. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm Dave Henderson. I am CEO and co-founder of CyberStreams. I've met Dan years ago in the manufacturing community, and he's a wealth of information experience. Everybody's seen the title for this. I think Dan's got a really compelling bit of information. I myself very interested in it as I've worked in software in the past and trying to used to always say Alt Tab integration. If you know, you hit Alt Tab on the keyboard to flip back and forth between the 7 softwares you have to type somebody's new name in or that sort of stuff, and be quite frustrating and limiting. So, Dan, you want to get your presentation going? Tell us a little bit about the
You bet.
improving flow of information.
Yeah, let me share my screen here. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Well, hi everybody. We're going to be talking about strategies for improving information flow, and we'll get into what causes bad information flow and some of the other elements of how you can improve it. A little bit about us. We're located here on South Lake Union and been in business for 20 years now. We've helped over 700 manufacturing companies in improving their information flow and their material flow and their product flow. We've got a lot of repeat customers, and we don't have a big marketing arm of our company. We rely on the referrals from customers that we've serviced in the past. So we hire management directors level, VP level people who have engineering roots, so they can do the analysis. They understand the analysis and the technical, but they also understand change management. Well, to start out, when we talk about information flow in manufacturing, we're really talking about enterprise management system. And this is kind of a change, really. We used to talk about ERP a lot, but really, ERP is only just one element of the enterprise management system. You've got the PLM, the product lifecycle management, that's really about the engineering, the drawings, the creation of BOMs, and product information and product detail. The enterprise resource planning is more about order tracking and inventory tracking, or inventory, the quantity tracking, I should say, not location tracking, and then the customers and the vendors management. While the manufacturing execution system portion of the EMS is about tracking locations out on the floor, WIP, and track machine time and labor tracking. So that's where the job costing information comes from. So all three of these work together, and the most common, the direction that we're seeing a big trend right now in trying to connect these three elements of the EMS. The big push right now that we're seeing is getting integration between the PLC and ERP to flow the bill of materials and the part revisions, like say from SolidWorks, and pulling those into the ERP. Job costing and labor tracking is a big deal for financials, but that has to come from the MES, and the labor is tracked in operations in the manufacturing execution system. And getting that automated and so that we have good job costing and labor. And then also between the PLC and the MES, that the routing information communicated to the MES, and then also machine data for maintenance, preventative downtime, that sort of thing. So those are some of the big pushes for data flow that we're seeing right now in our projects. So what are some common issues with data flow? Well, what we're seeing is scalability. Sometimes systems out there just can only handle so many users before they're maxed out. Poor integration between functions, eliminate those multiple spreadsheets that you're using to pass information on. Maybe the customer's asking for information that you just don't have out of your current system. And so you're producing it manually, right? There's a lot of, maybe you're introducing new complexities into your business model, like custom engineer to order. Maybe you used to produce products, but now you're doing more engineer to order. And that's a whole nother requirement that can create lapses in data flow or manual efforts. So manual input, of course, spreadsheets and logs are always a sign of that your data flow is broken. And if your data is from the past, if you look into your system and it's not real time, well, that's broken data flow as well. The other thing we're seeing often on the manufacturers that have expensive equipment or expensive parts that are being automated or machined, they want to know if that machine is dysfunctioning right now. They don't want to wait until it produces 100 more parts that go to the garbage. So having that real-time information and shutting down the machine right away. And reporting and visibility is a big thing. With data flow, what's the point of having good data if you can't see it or if you can't get to it? So a good sign that you don't have good data flow is when it takes your accountant or your controller, a day to get you a report that you need so that you can see how you're doing. The direction is real-time visibility to those things. So yeah, those are some of the common issues of broken data flow that we see. And then if you go back to the root cause, many times it's in the implementation. So bad implementation, bad data flow, right? And what are some of the causes or strategies that lead to bad data flow or bad implementations? So we hear that these are some of the things that make me pull my hair out. I don't have much left. So when somebody says, well, all EMS systems are basically the same, so let's just pick one. And I've had customers who were in manufacturing, they called food processing companies and said, hey, what system do you use? And then they put it in thinking it was like Microsoft Excel, and all of a sudden it didn't have the functionality they needed. Well, the EMS salesperson says the system will work for us, so this must be the right one. Or let's just get that software in place and we can modify it later to make it work for us. This is probably the most common in that, hey, maybe you went through the right process and you found the right software, but then you say, well, our people are super busy, but they're just going to need to stretch to get the system in place. Well, guess what? People cut corners, and next thing you know, you have real problems with your system. It wasn't tested, the data conversion was bad, whatever it might be. We're going to go live on this date no matter what. if it's not ready, we can fix it later. Or the worst case change management, the number one rule is get collaboration. So when somebody says, well, not everybody agrees with this system, but we're going to go forward, that's a sure sign that that project is going to die on the vine. A successful implementation process follows these steps, and that is, the first step is really define what it is that you want to accomplish. What are your objectives? Define the process that you want. And then once you do that, create the document that becomes the cornerstone for the entire procurement of the software, or if you're doing it in-house, the configuration, right? Create that RFI, and then see a demonstration of how it would work. And it doesn't have to be your exact data at this point, but just get a demo. And then before you buy the software, if you are actually going out and buying it rather than fixing your own, make sure you get everything you need, like get the statement of work, have the contract in place for service, have a detailed plan, and know what the expected ROI is going to be. So then, of course, then on the implementation side, you've got the system configuration and lots of testing, the systematic testing to make sure it works right, make sure everybody's trained, and then have a go, no go decision where it's like you're ready to take off. So have a flight checklist. Are all these things in place? Then you have your final conversion and go live. So step one, really know those business objectives, figure out what you have, what you need, and what's the best way to fill the gap. Here's an example of just process mapping of the business processes, and make sure that you know exactly how it's going to work and each step along the way. When you do that, in order to get the good flow, don't just document just the process steps, but look at the documents that are being used. What are the performance measures? Consider who in the organization is doing this, and the handoffs between the organizational the people, and what systems are being used, and approvals. Who has to approve this, and what is the delay in that process? And again, it's always smart to when you're looking at fixing your system, you don't want to just immediately jump to a new system, right? Start with what you have and ask the question, okay, what is it that I need? And talk to your VAR, talk to your value-added resource first to see if in fact they can fix it, and what would it take to add those things that you need, that you identified as gaps. And if your current system can't be fixed, then maybe there's an additional module or an upgrade. If that can't get it there, then maybe there's a third-party bolt-on that's out there that your software company partners with. And then if that's not the case, then maybe a new ERP system. And we always look at custom modifications as a high risk. Do you really want to be a beta site where you're using software that you're the first user? Of course, there's software technology considerations too on your data flow. Obviously, cloud versus hosted versus on-prem. is the software proprietary, or can you get in there and easily access it? And then I guess a big one for us is, do you have a sandbox that you can test and play in? And normally what you want is, you want the live scenario, then you want a test scenario, and then you want a training scenario, um, where you can, all three are important to have. You don't want to be testing and training in your live scenario. And it's always good to know, what those up front, before you go in, what are the requirements of your industry? This just happens to be some of the aerospace considerations, but medical devices are going to have their own list. Food industry is going to have its own list. So knowing what those requirements are is really important, and really, and not just saying, well, we want to be ITAR compliant, because just saying ITAR compliance can mean a lot of different things to different people. I had a client who got all the way down to implementation and found out that the ITAR compliance that was promised to them didn't exactly work the way that they needed it to. It happened to be that they either, in the system that they bought, it either had to be all ITAR compliant or not, as one flip switch, and they happen to have some ITAR clients and some not, some non-ITAR required clients, and that killed the project right there. This is a great tool for, if you ever want a great tool for decision making, collaborative decision making, let me know. This is, we teach a class on this, and basically, instead of arguing about solutions, decide on what the criteria are for evaluation on a new software or a decision. It could be what truck you want to buy or whatever it might be, but it's a great way for a group to make a decision. And when you buy software, again, it goes back to, if you want good data flow, have everything in place when you make the purchase. That's a big step in good data flow, and making sure that you have all these things when you're negotiating. You'd want to buy performance. You want to get performance and not just software. Always think, I'm buying an efficient purchasing process. I'm not buying software, or, I'm buying good flow of my engineer to order orders through my shop. So making sure, having that mindset is really important. Making sure you have good license agreements, know what the budget's going to be before you buy it, know what the payment terms are. These are all the things this is their checklist. You should have interviewed the lead consultant who's going to help you out, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them if it's a purchase. And know what your responsibilities are. Don't be surprised if they say, well, we don't do training, that's on you, or, we don't write standard operating procedures. Many of the companies out there don't. And then the acceptance criteria is really usually left to you. You have to tell them when it's acceptable. So know what the acceptance criteria is before you go in. And then also know your business cycle considerations. Don't probably, if your product is a high holiday season seller, then you probably don't want to be implementing in November, right? And if you're going to make changes or improve your information flow, have a good team structure, or have a good structure that is going to give you the support that you need. You should have an executive project sponsor which is going to go out to the steering committee, which is the C-level people, and then the project manager reports to the executive sponsor, and then they're managing 3 different parties, which is really the impacted managers that are out there that have to manage the people that are making this change. Then you've got the consultants and the hardware suppliers. Then you've got the Tiger team, who is typically going to be the people who are testing and training. The strategy for reducing risk is basically put off all those risky elements of the software that can delay you. We're seeing a lot of people push off, like sometimes they're going to push off MRP to a phase 2 or production scheduling, or some of those things that they can follow up shortly after so that they can get the system in place and then put those in parallel without holding up the whole project. And have it's really important to have an acceptance test, systematic way of testing. So set up your tests beforehand, have a plan of how you're going to run the test, how you're going to collect the data, and how you're going to log any issues. And then also, many times bad data flow may not be the system. It just may be that people just don't know how to use the system. So, back up and maybe look at that as well as another potential cause of bad data flow. Are the people, we typically like to see at least 5 experts on the system in the company, like one in finance, one in supply chain, one out on the floor in the shop, maybe shipping and receiving, and then possibly sales and customer service. And having multiple experts in the different areas. One is you have some redundancy and expertise so that if you lose the expert, you're not stuck. And then secondly, you have people there that can train and make sure that the people in each operation are following the right procedures. So Dave, that's the presentation, and certainly open it up to questions or whatever we might want to do. You're on mute.
My partner has a coffee cup that says you're on mute. I'm gonna laugh.
Does he just hold it up?
How many times a week do we say that? No, thank you, Dan. I mentioned that early in my career, I got involved in software decisions, and I saw some things that really brought back some memories, right? So, you talked about the 3 different system types. Are you seeing folks like picking best in class for each area, or are you seeing folks start to consolidate around a single provider?
Well, COVID was very, very good to software, to EMS systems. And what we're seeing is a lot of the companies, the systems that used to be called ERPs are now EMSs. They're building those integrations in, and they're building the integrations, and they're adding a PLC and an MES into the software. And so what we're seeing is just more robust systems that are out there without paying a lot of extra money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are those within the range of a smaller manufacturer? Like let's say people have 10 employees, 3 or 4 million in revenue. Can they afford a package like that?
Probably that it would be a stretch, but there are a few
Mhm,
companies out there that offer that reach down, and I would
mhm.
say, 10 million in revenue is probably right on the line.
Gotcha.
But there's companies like MyTrack or
Mhm,
Visibility or some
mhm,
of the that will reach down and can provide, the three pillars,
mhm,
if you
mhm.
will.
Yeah,
So,
I imagine you're seeing a lot of companies that they have maybe they have one software package that handles all of one of those. I keep going back to. Will you pull up your PowerPoint again and go to the slide with the triangle on it for me?
yeah.
I think we talked once before. I worked for a CRM company in the late '90s, and I'd gotten put a whole bunch of work into getting the company to give up trying to create their own middleware and to partner with another company. It's quite an adventure. But I'm wondering if you seeing people like maybe they're trying to consolidate ERP and PLC together, but they like the MES. Uh,
Mhm.
are you seeing a myriad of different ways people are attacking getting because I'm sure a lot of these packages there's a middleware out there you can drop in, you can start moving some data
Sure.
around. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. So
Yeah.
are you seeing success with that strategy? Do you have a case study in mind?
Uh, well, I mean, we're working with a company right now who uh, they they have an MES, right?
Hmm.
But they're not happy with their financials.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, as we work up the ladder, that would be an example of, hey, maybe there's a third party out there that can solve this problem or fill in one of the
Hmm.
three. Um, and so
Hmm.
it's always, you know, if you can, if you can integrate, if you're happy with, if you have, you know, two of the three and that you're happy with, we see that quite often where they just want to fill in one of these circles and not all
Gotcha.
of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You don't
Um,
want to, yeah.
are you is this the right forum to talk about some of the softwares that you're seeing people choosing these days? Are they going for new innovative softwares? Or they're picking? I worked with a manufacturer last year that went to um, it was NetSuite, right? And
Yeah.
I think they counted 7 or 8 different softwares that they trashed and went all in NetSuite. But it was 40, $50,000 in consulting fees just to make the
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there?
Yeah. Um, Not a big fan of NetSuite for manufacturing.
Hmm.
Uh, they have a really good sales arm and they push their product out there and uh, they mainly sell to the CFO. They have a great accounting
Yeah,
system, but if you want to add anything else, it's an arm and a leg. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
their MES is kind of like, when you go to a hotel and they
Hmm.
say, yeah, we have a workout room, and you go down there and it's like a closet with a mirror on it and one stairmaster. Well,
Right.
that's their
Uh-huh.
MES.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So
And
I use that as
yeah,
an example though. Do you have some recommendations of some good solutions that you've been helping people with?
well, there are literally hundreds of ERP systems out there,
Right. Hmm.
and each one of them specializes in a specific industry, right?
Gotcha. Hmm.
I mean, if you're talking about engineer to order, uh, you've got a you've got a list, and it really depends on how big you are
Right.
and 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 what type of business you have. Is it are you are you in aerospace? Then that so you have 100, right? And then you start
Hmm.
asking the questions.
Yeah.
Well, are you in aerospace? Okay, well that shrinks it down. Are you product based or engineer to order? Well, then that shrinks it down.
Mhm. Right.
Are you under 20 million in revenue? Well, then now you're talking about, maybe a group. Whereas with food, you're clear over here. You're looking at a whole different uh, set of software that
Mhm.
the aerospace company wouldn't even touch.
Yeah,
So
makes
it really does depend, and there are literally 100 or more successful ERP systems out there that have their niche.
Mhm.
And so the that's where we come in. We're experts at kind of figuring out what niche you're in and what software fits what you want to do.
I gotcha. I mentioned a few times that I've worked in software in the past in the through the 90s and the early 2000s, and I remember a lot of conversations about we have processes today and there are software out there, and you could maintain your current process and then try your best to modify the software to match it,
Yeah,
or you can try to buy really great software and figure out how it works and change your business processes to match the software.
yeah,
Uh, Usually, it has to be a blend of all of that, right?
yeah,
But I think I heard you say, kind of know yourself, right? Understand what you're looking at, what your problems are, what your needs are, and then go shopping for software, middleware, tool sets, and that sort of stuff. Can you speak on that just a little bit more? Are you seeing
yeah.
a trend?
Well, I would like to see a trend of more people looking at it that way. Like start with, form follows function. You've heard that in
Right.
architecture before.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Right.
start with the function, right? And it would be great if if everybody did that before they went out and bought software. But the other thing, you can go too far too.
Hmm.
Uh, I've seen companies that say, "Oh, well, there's no other manufacturing company that does what we do and how we do it, right?" And so they define what they do, and then they they don't really they get customized. They find a software company that and they require them to customize everything to fit exactly how they do it today.
Right.
And I would encourage everybody to be open-minded and ask the question of, give them what it is that you want and let them come back to you with how they do it and not tell them this is how we want the software to work. Just tell
Hmm.
them what you want it to be doing, and let them tell you how their software works. And try to avoid custom as much as possible because,
I think that's good advice, Dan.
yeah,
Something I've learned from having helped write software and all that is they don't invent software out of the ether, right? They've gone out
yeah,
and they've gathered requirements from people who are doing it, and they're trying to find best
mhm,
practices and develop that into the software. So, but just one more thing from me. So, when we first talked about this theme, this flow of data, and I bet you everybody on the call and everybody that watches the recording later, uh, they're going to have these spots in their mind around, gosh, classic problem. One of my clients moves, I update their address, and it doesn't make it to all six of my softwares, right?
yeah,
Is there is there an incremental approach to this, right? Because you could you go, what are my top three problems that I have, and I want to use the eight software systems I have today. Go look for some tool that can sync those or most of them. Is there an approach to that? Start small and build. Or does it make more sense to say just get in there and take a good look at everything and map it all out? I worked for a company where we had a consultant there for 3 months just doing swim lanes. Every
yeah,
single process in the organization
yeah,
was current state documented, and then we sat down and talked about how to approach that, right? So
Yeah. Well, and right now, software is cheap, right? Because, well, COVID was very good to software applications, and
mhm.
and it's cheap enough so that uh, the departments can go buy their own with their own departmental budget. So you see a lot of that where each department buys its own software, where shipping bought their software, and then HR has their own software, and then manufacturing has their own applications, and shipping has their software. And this has actually taken us back a few steps when it comes to data flow, this phenomenon,
Right.
because unless somebody at the C level is looking at it from the whole umbrella and the information flow from one end to the other of the organization, the departments are going to take care of themselves. And then there's going to be a lot of broken software handoffs between those departments, because usually when you map it out and you do what you did with the swim lanes,
Uh-huh.
the biggest delays aren't in the department, they're between departments. It's the handoffs that kill you.
Yeah. Well, fortunately in 1994 when I was dealing with that, there wasn't any of that software sprawl.
94, you're ancient.
Oh, well, yes, I am. Uh, ancient enough, not as old as you. Um, well,
That's
we haven't got any
true.
questions from the audience. I really thought that was a great presentation. Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure and
Anytime.
get this recording posted so some of the folks that weren't able to make it will be able to watch it later. And for those of you who attended, we really appreciate it. All right. Should we wrap it up, Mel?
Do that.
Yeah. All right.